You've shown that you have the financial freedom, but you didn't always have financial freedom. In fact, when you were growing up, you were really poor, right?
Extremely.
Extremely poor.
We had no money at Thanksgiving for food. It's part of why last year I started feeding when I was 17. I started feeding families because I was fed when I was 11. And I fed 2 families literally, and it was so moving. I said, I'm gonna double it. I went to 4 and then to 8. And then it was like a game to see could I reach more people. And then I started with some of my employees. And then eventually I got to 1 million people a year, then 2 million. Then I started matching my foundation with 2 million. So for 12 years, I fed 4 million people a year. And then when I was writing this book, I'm interviewing, if you can imagine, all these people started with nothing and are multi-billionaires. At the same time, Congress cut food stamps, it's called SNAP now, but it was food stamps originally, by $8 billion. Wow. So it's equivalent, to give you an idea, of every family that's being supported giving up all their meals 1 week out of every month for 12 months. Wow. So I decided I wanted to do something about it. So I got a $5 million advance for the book. I gave all the money to Feeding America. And then I said, if I want to feed 100 million people, what I got to do? So I wrote a much bigger check. And now we did 102 million people last year, but now I'm going to do 100 million again this year. And I got a plan to feed 1 billion people over the next 10 years. So it's so full circle from where I began. It's crazy, and it's an incredible privilege to be able to make a difference like that.
Why is it important to be thinking of giving and contribution in order to generate wealth? When people say that, well, I don't have much to give, I'm barely making enough to pay my rent, my food, how can I have the mindset of giving in order to build wealth? What would you say?
It's the only, you never get beyond scarcity. You got to start beyond it. You got to plant your feet. And so many people say, well, when I'm rich, I'll give some money. Right. If you won't give a dime out of $1, I can promise you're not going to give 10 million out of 100 million. Right. Not in a trillion years. So if you start, what I always believe is it transforms you. I had a group of kids that I went to, like when I was 31 years old, I was invited to this grade school in Houston, Texas. And each grade did a little mini assembly for me of how they used my stuff, at that year. And at the end, I was really emotional, and I was like, you guys asked me to come inspire you, you've inspired me. And so the 6th graders had only done it for 1 year, and I said, I'm gonna sponsor your college educations. I had no idea how I was gonna do it. I didn't have the money to do it, but I said, I was 31 years old. Wow. I was doing well, but not that well. And I said, I'm gonna pay for your college educations, but I said, here are the rules of the game. And I just made it up while I was right there. I said, you gotta keep a B average. I'll get you mentors. There's no excuse not to be above average. You gotta not use drugs. You not get yourself in prison, and you got to give me 20 hours of community service a year. Wow. And the reason I did that is I don't have a college education, but I knew if I got these kids who thought they needed something to be the ones to go give something, it would change their identity, it would change their life more than college. Right. And ironically, I think we had 70 kids originally. I lost 95 kids I was going to lose. I lost the first year. It was like 30 kids. And the reason was their parents did not want them to have to do community service. They said they should be receiving, they shouldn't have to work. And it was just staggering to me. Wow. But the ones that did it, some have PhDs now, went through that process. So I really believe that the secret to living is giving, as corny as it sounds. I had an experience where I was driving on the 57 freeway, not far from here in San Gabriel Valley, and it was midnight. I was driving my 1968 Volkswagen Bug, Baja Bug, and I was been in business for, a year and a half, and I was working my guts out, and I was so frustrated because, I always say that most people overestimate what they can do in a year and they underestimate what they can do in a decade or 2 or 3, right? So I'd been working for this year and a half as hard as I could work, and nothing was working at the level I wanted, and I was so frustrated. I was mad with myself, I was mad with the environment. I was feeling overwhelmed and stressed. It's midnight, I'm exhausted. And all of a sudden, this thought hit me, and I literally pulled over on the side of the road, and I've always kept physical journals. I still have the journal to this day. And I wrote on this one whole page, the secret to living is giving. Wow. And I sat there and I cried, because I just realized my life for the last year had gotten focused on why isn't it working instead of how do I give more? And I made that shift, and it was one of the most important shifts in my entire life. And for probably a year, things started to get better. And then, you're in business, you make mistakes, I was a young kid, and I found myself all of a sudden in a 400 square foot bachelor apartment. I'd lost the progress that I'd made. And I was so broke that I wrote about this at the end of my book, because I was trying to think, how do I get this thought across to somebody? And the most seminal moment for me was, I had, $21, $22, whatever it was, to my name. I'm living in a 400 square foot bachelor apartment. I'm feeling sorry for myself. I'm watching Luke and Laura on General Hospital. I mean, I was a mess. I was a total mess. And I realized I've not paid my rent and I'm out of money. And I don't have any prospects for some new cash in the short term. How am I even going to eat? So I decided to go to this all-you-could-eat salad bar that they had around the corner of this place called El Chorrito. Still there in Marina Del Rey. And I lived in Venice, so it was about a 3-mile walk. I didn't take the car because I couldn't pay for parking, you know, for the gas. And I walked there and I went in and I had this meal where I basically loaded up for the winter. I ate plates of food, just tacos and salads and everything else. And while I was sitting there, there was this little boy that came in. He opened the door and he was wearing this little vest, this little suit. And he, I don't know, probably 9 years old, something like that, 8, 9, 10. And he held the door open and in walks behind him this beautiful woman who was clearly his mother. And so, I definitely took it in. And then he sat down, he pulled out the chair for her, and he was just so attentive to his mother. I mean, he was just so with her that honestly, I was moved. And so I finished my meal, and then I got up and I paid the bill, and I don't know, it was like $6 in those days, for all you could eat salad bar, whatever it was. And so I had whatever's left, $17, $18, $19. And I walked over to this little boy before I left. And I said, hi, and I introduced myself. I said, I'm Tony, and he told me his name was Paul or whatever it was. I don't remember his name. This little boy. I said, Paul, I said, you are a class act. I said, I saw you held the door open for your woman. I saw how you pulled up the chair for her. I said, taking her out to lunch like that, that is really cool. And he goes, well, she's my mom.
Right.
And I said, that's even more cool. And I said, taking her to lunch. He goes, well, I didn't take her to lunch. He goes, I think he said he was 8 or 9. He said, I'm 9 years old. I don't have a job yet. And I said, yes, you are taking her to lunch. And I reached in my pocket and I took all the money I had left, whatever it was, $17, $18, $19, and I dropped it in front of him. I had no plan to do this. It wasn't like manufactured. I wasn't trying to impress this woman. And he looked up at me like shocked and he goes, I can't take that. And I said, sure you can. He said, how come? I said, because I'm bigger than you are, right? And he laughed like crazy and I didn't even say another word. I just walked out the door, didn't even look at his mom.
You didn't get her number, huh?
No, I didn't get her number. And I got to tell you, it was the most powerful experience of my life because I didn't walk home, I kind of flew home. And I should have been like, what is the matter with you? You have no money for food. You get the last little pennies you have left. But I had no fear. I had no scarcity. And I got home and I realized what I'd done. I was like, I have no money now. I have like no money, nothing, right? I was trying to conserve by going there, And I don't know. I just thought I've worked on a plan. I figured I'll figure this out. And the next day I got the old snail mail and came in around like noon and I pull out this letter and there's a young man that I had loaned $1,200 to and he had not paid me back and I was desperate for cash. So I probably called him 10 times trying to track him down, not a single response. And I was so hurt and pissed. And here's the letter from this guy saying, I'm really sorry. I know you've been trying to reach me.
Wow.
I've been avoiding you. And here's the money you owe, and I'm going to give you some interest as well. So I got, at that point, that was like more money than anything. And so once again, I'm sitting there, tears going down my face. I'm an emotional character. And I just thought to myself, why did this happen? And I chose to believe, I don't know if it's true, but I chose to believe that it's because I let go of trying to just take care of myself. I did what was right. I didn't plan it. I did it spontaneously. I saw it. It felt right to me. I did it. And I felt no scarcity. And I can tell you, I've had plenty of tough times. I have 18 companies and 12 I manage actively. I got 1,200 employees on multiple continents. We do $5 billion a year in sales across different industries now. I mean, it's a different world for me now. But since that, and I've been near bankruptcy multiple times in companies and things like that. I pulled it off always, never went bankrupt. But I faced really tough times. I never went back to that level of scarcity, not since that day. So it's a long way of saying, when you have nothing is when you need to give. If you're gonna wait till you think you have something, you're never gonna have something of any size or scope. There's something inside the human psyche that when you do what's right and you get outside of yourself, there's something that'll click for you. And also, tithing is a perfect example. I don't know anybody, regardless of religious belief, who's tithed 10% of their income for a decade and not prospered massively. And Sir John Templeton was the first billionaire investor, was the first person who said that to me. He said, Tony, I know you tithe, but he said, tithe more. He said, do more, give more, And he said, you'll receive more, just how it works. And I found it to be absolutely true.
Really? You continue to give more and more every year?
Yeah, well, I was looking, I was writing checks for $5 million. I mean, work on a book for 4 years and give up all the profits for it. And then I wanted to feed more people, so I wrote another big check above that. And now I'm doing it this year. I'm going to do it for the next 10 years.
Amazing. If you could only have, if you had to strip them all away, you can always use one strategy or one thing to use, what would that be?
I wouldn't.
Okay.
Part of why I'm effective is because I don't buy that. I'm always looking for more strategy, because one strategy will work with one person, not with another.
Of course.
But philosophically, I would say that the capacity to strengthen and increase your hunger is the one common denominator amongst the most successful people. You know, Richard Branson's a good friend of mine, and Peter Guber, Steve Wynn, all these guys, they've never lost their hunger. Most people are hungry to achieve a certain amount, make a certain amount of money, and then they get comfortable and relax, or to get a certain level of fitness, and then they relax. But, you know, Richard is as driven today as when he was 16 years old starting. I mean, he's like on fire, and he's 65 years old. Warren Buffett is 85 years old. He's as driven today as when, you know, he began the journey, right? And so people that have that hunger, I believe intelligence, I love people that are wickedly smart. And I work to be wickedly smart by educating and training myself and so forth, and training my brain. But there's a lot of intelligent people can't fight their way out of a paper bag, right?
Absolutely.
Hunger is the ultimate driver, because if you're hungry, you can get the strategy, you can get the answer. If you can't model it, you can find it. So hunger, modeling would be maybe the next best skill, knowing that success leaves clues. Like, why reinvent the wheel? If someone took this plane, was Mickey's plane, who owns the Miami Heat and owns Carnival, right? I mean, you can learn so much from a man like Mickey. It blow your mind what this man has been able to do in his life. And so why would I go learn by trial and error and maybe take 10 or 20 years when I could learn from somebody in a few weeks or a few months or a few hours, something that could save me a decade? That's what it is. That's why I read 700 books in the first 7 years, because I was like, if somebody takes 10 years of their life, they pour it into a book, and I can read that in an hour or 2 or 3 or 4, why wouldn't I?
So how does someone continue to stay hungry, or rediscover what they're hungry about?
The best way is get around where it's better and things will hit you.
Say it again?
Get around where it's better and things will hit you. Who you spend time with is who you become. So, you know, when I started coaching all these billionaires, you know, there's a part of me that said, I'm as smart in certain areas as they are. I got to step my game up. It's not about the money. It's about, how can I take the invisible and make it visible? How can I find a way to add more value to other people to such an extent where economics are not a question whatsoever? And then I can take those economics and do even more where I'm not there. I look at money as portable power. I can leverage my money to do things for people even when I sleep. Now, I love doing these for people, and I work 18, 20-hour days still, but it's really nice to have the leverage of that as well.
Sure. In a few sentences, what would you say is your current vision for life? What's the vision you have, and what's the legacy that you want to leave behind?
I saw, have you seen Hamilton, the play in New York?
I hear it's incredible. Everyone's raving about it. You've seen it, right, Nick? Yeah, it's amazing.
Isn't it extraordinary?
It's amazing.
I loved it. I thought it was might be a lot of hype, but it was as good as the promise.
Really?
There's a line in Hamilton that I thought was really interesting. It says, legacy is planting seeds in a garden that you'll never see. I thought it was really interesting. But so for me,
what's the garden you want to create you'll never see?
For me, it's human lives. For me, I love, my life is about being a blessing in the lives of the people I meet. I hope that whoever decides to watch your video, I hope something here will strike them and they can say, I got to get in proximity, or I got to raise my standard, or I'm going to go master my damn money. I'm not going to dabble. I hope that it stimulates someone in a way where it becomes a blessing in their life. And my legacy is the lives that I've touched, and my legacy is the institutions that I'm building right now that when I'm gone will continue to touch people. My foundation, the work that I'm doing with mentoring with kids, the ability to touch another generation. But my heartfelt prayer every day is be a blessing. And it's interesting. Sometimes you're a blessing just by giving somebody a few moments, just by loving on them, just being with them. Sometimes you're being a blessing because you coach them or you intervene with them. You can be a blessing in so many ways, but that's my daily focus. And it's not what I'm going to build for the long term. It's really what am I going to do right now.
Why is that? Why do you want to create that legacy?
Again, it's less about legacy than it is about doing what I'm made for while I'm here and maximizing. I want the end to have me. I want to be climbing them out when I die, not sliding. So to me, it's about growth and it's about giving. Those are the only things that fulfill human beings. I always tell people, if you want to be happy, it's one word: progress. If you can make progress, and if your progress is not only within yourself, but it's actually doing something of value for more than yourself, you're going to be a damn fulfilled person.
Yeah. How do you stay grounded in your personal and intimate relationships when everyone wants a piece of you? You know, you sell out events, 10, 20, 30,000 people come to your conferences, pay tens of thousands of dollars. Everyone wants to interview you. You're coaching presidents, billionaires, world-class athletes. They call you, they want you to help them break through the next level. How do you stay grounded in your marriage or with your kids or with, you know, friends?
Yeah. My mom's craziness gave me a great gift. I wanted to be a professional athlete and I wanted to be a professional baseball player. And when I got cut from the junior high school team, I figured out I'm in trouble. So I decided to become a sportscaster and a sports writer. Wow. And so I took typing when I was in junior high school. I was the only boy in an all-girl shorthand class, so I could capture everything because I wanted to be the best reporter, best sportscaster. I interviewed Howard Cosell and Woody Hayes and Dodgers and Rams. I got a job working for a daily newspaper when I was 13. And then I got this huge break, which was, I got these interviews no one had, like Joe Namath when he was so famous. I got these interviews, and here in LA, KTTV Channel 11, it's now Fox Channel, they were trying to get viewership, and so they kept trying different kinds of sportscasters. They even tried Fanny Fox the stripper. And somebody watched some interviews I did and went, holy shit, this 14-year-old kid, I was about to be 15, he's brilliant, and he's getting interviews nobody else is getting, you know? So they called me up and they offered me the job to be the nightly sportscaster as I was turning 15. Wow. And I was out of my mind, like the dream I was gonna have when I was like 25 or 30 was happening, you know, I'm gonna be 15. And my mom said to me, your ego's too big, and if I let you do this, you're gonna even get bigger. And she not only would not let me take the job, she made me quit my job working for the Progress Bulletin, which was a daily newspaper in Pomona, California, doing sports. And I hated her, and I was devastated, but it created a sensitivity inside of me that along with, I think, watching athletes who would not sign a card for a kid because they were making money selling cards, would make me so angry that I said, I'm never going to be one of those people. And so I'm not. You know, I've certainly have plenty of pride in what I've been able to accomplish and people I've been able to help, but I always know I'm just a guy. And while I've worked my ass off, I've also had grace in my life, you know, and I think when you achieve things, it comes from incredible obsessive focus, massive action, and figuring out how to execute and do things effectively, and it's grace. And I never forget that that's a part of the formula for where my life is today.
Do you think people need a little bit of ego to have that kind of drive and insanity or obsession, or is it more just belief in a bigger vision?
I think, you know, ego can produce drive, but that kind of ego will make you not be fulfilled. Yes. And we all have it until we get a few hammers, because in the beginning when you're young, especially a young man, I think even more so than a woman, you know, you're trying to find yourself, you're trying to prove yourself to the world, and really you're trying to prove it to yourself. Right. Like in the very beginning for me, I used to attack psychiatrists and psychologists because I care about people so much, and because I learned how to handle them in an hour, and they're working with someone for 7 years, and I would just go crazy. But I was also attacking them because I was also defensive because I didn't have a degree, and so I figured I'm gonna be on the offense, I'm gonna show them. But as I grew up, I realized, holy shit, these people care just as much as I do. Now I've trained 100,000 therapists around the world with my partner, Chloe Madonna. So we make films of people's lives, like suicidal people who've been through hell, and you get to watch how I do it, as I do it, and then you get to see them 2 years later to know it really worked. Right.
Do you ever question choices or decisions you make today? And does everything you touch turn into what you want it to be?
No, of course not. No. Failure is part of life. I mean, the difference for me, though, is I look at failure as a stepping stone to success. It's a speed bump. I know I'm going to fail, but it's not failure if you learn something. And so, gosh, I've made so many mistakes. I've screwed so many things up. But every time I do, it just becomes a way for me to explain to someone else what it takes. You know, it's like, here's what I've done. I think I have the ability to influence people because I talk about my failures. I talk about all the things that messed me up, but I show people that I didn't let it stop me, and you don't let it stop you. And I think that's really the secret in that area.
And if everything you touch was successful, you probably wouldn't be able to relate to people as much.
No, you'll be relate, and also it's be total bullshit, and everyone knows it's bullshit. And also you'd be bored silly. I mean, think about it. If you just said, I want this and it happened, I want this and it happened, you know, people don't value what they don't fight for. You know, it's like you see kids sometimes in it, you know, your parents will say, you're not going to value this if you don't work for it. And your kid going, I'll value it, just give it to me, right? But it's true. You know, the things we've worked the hardest for, we value the most. So I think, you know, the purpose of a goal is not getting it anyway. The purpose of a goal, you know, is who you become. Who you become is going to make you happy or it's going to make you sad. So I'm not looking for an effortless approach. There's no such thing.
Now I'm curious about relationships and building wealth. Is it important to, or how important is it to have the right partner in a marriage or an intimate relationship in relating to building wealth? Does it matter who you choose, their mindset? Does any of that play the effect in how much you're going to make, or?
It won't affect how much you make, but it'll affect how your relationship a lot, right? You know, getting on the same page is really, really important. But when my wife and I met, we both grew up very poor. But I decided that I was going to find a way to add so much value that money would never be a question for my family, and you know, it would never stop me from giving or doing or sharing anything. And I made that decision early on. So I became an earner, ways of earning. She became a negotiator, a cost manager. Her mom's number one thing is somebody comes in, she goes, sharpen your pencil. That's not a good enough deal. And so when we first met, I remember we were in New York City, and this dates me how old I am, but I remember when they first came out with digital cameras, the very first digital cameras from Sony. And it was like such a cool thing. You could take 12 pictures or whatever it was in those days. But we were down in New York City, we're in Times Square, and we went into one of those camera shops, and it was Christmas time. And I saw the camera, and I was like so excited about this camera. And I said, you know what, I'm gonna get one for my brother, my sister, my mom, and you know, I came up with, I don't know, it was like 12 cameras, and they were very expensive then. I think they were like $1,200 or $2,000 each. They were really crazy.
Now they're like 200 for the same.
Yeah, no, not even. It's a million times better. But I went to the counter, and the guy goes, oh my God, Tony Robbins, can I take a picture with you? I'll put it on the wall. And so I said, sure. And she goes, hey, sharpen your pencil. What kind of deal are you gonna give my boyfriend here?
Oh my gosh.
And I wanted to grab her by the throat and just go, what are you doing here? It's like, what are you doing? And she's like, no, what's the deal here? And he goes, oh, well, I give you 10% off. She goes, sharpen your pencil, 10%. You're not taking a picture with my boyfriend. And I'm wanting to murder her, right? And I was so mad. And so she got like 15% off and free camera cases and all this stuff. And I'm shaking my head. When we left, I was like, we had this big fight.
Wow.
Today, I just call her Squeaky. She's my squeaky girl. She wants to go to Walmart as if we'd ever need to go to Walmart, you know?
Right.
And what I do is I'm delighted by the difference. And I go, you know what a beautiful gift. I've been in relationships before where I gave everything and the people were totally unconscious with money. So to answer your question, it's nice to be on the same page. But you know, one day I told my wife I was coaching someone and the person gave me a $250,000 bonus. I don't care who you are. It's mind-boggling. It was like, he didn't have to. It wasn't part of the deal. He pays me $1 million a year plus a piece of the upside. And he just said, Tony, you did so much for me. I just want to give you this additional $250,000 bonus. And it wasn't the money. It was the generosity that just knocked me off my seat. And so I called my wife and I said, honey, Paul just gave me a $250,000 bonus. I mean, I was like, he's so generous. And she goes, oh, that's nice, honey. Hey, do you know what I'm making for lunch? And I'm like,
wow.
you know? So I used to get upset about it. Now I'm like, that's my squeaky little girl. I'm thrilled she doesn't have to think about it. I'm in charge. And so I don't think your partner has to. One of you has to master it. And you have to have some alignment.
Okay. Right? But you don't want them to be against you, essentially.
Well, sometimes they're going to be. We were against each other in some ways. We're having fights. But what you eventually decide is, do I want to be right or do I want to be in love?
There you go.
I'd rather be in love personally, right?
That's a good quote.
And then also I just said, you know, to her, I said, listen, honey, I understand your intent. I had to go to her intent. Instead of being frustrated with her, saying, this is really actually a cool quality. And she's my opposite in that area. And we're a good balance together.
Right.
If you're constantly in pursuit, you're just pursuing external goals, it will wear your nervous system down. You will be exhausted and one will eventually run aground. You become mentally depressed. The key is to figure out what are the rewards that you can acquire along the way. Internally, remember, it's subjective. There can also be external rewards.